Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me once again Gazelam and the one and only Guion Hughes.
Yeah.
And welcome once again to another episode of Religion and the Occult, where we do comparisons between the two. Once again, Gazelam and I have an evangelical Christian background, and Guion and I have.
I do. I roll around all the time. Well, yeah.
Gazelam has a Mormon background, so we just kind of talk about, mysticism and the occult. But anyway, so
I don't mind being evangelical. I wish I was holding on to rattlesnakes and shit growing up, but
hardcore. They're like the hardcore Christians.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy the stuff you see. But so I'm gonna read this statement here, and let's comment on this here. The occult challenges the conservative social standards and dictates of religion, thus forcing it to come to terms with the totality of human experience, at times checking or repressing it. At other times, the occult finds ways to incorporate it into its own practices. Religion, in turn, provides a stable ground for safe destination for those wishing to experiment with alternative points of views, even alternative states of consciousness. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I don't know. I think like conservative religion and stuff could do that, but I don't think occultism necessarily. I think it could be a check and balance kind of thing, but for the most part, I think modern occultism tends to expose that kind of stuff. Like, I just try to see it as exposing hypocrisy and things, and I don't know. I'd see it from a different point of view than what that whole question.
Yeah, that came from an essay from Penn State. What do you think, Guion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the occult. I would say there's instances where that's why a lot of times it's secret. I mean, because occult just means hidden. That was the root word.
Yeah.
And so I think what comes to mind, is like Freemasonry or Thelema or even like Satanism. It's like it's hidden and it's kind of counter to the religion a little bit, but then again, it's hidden because I think they're looking for people that really want to get into this, where religion is just kind of like what was that quote, that it's the opiate of the masses. I mean, everybody could get into religion. I mean, all you got to know is, whatever your religious leader is, if it's Jesus or it's Allah or whatever, Buddha, you just, could just chant that name and things good should happen to you, very simplistic. And occultism comes across saying, you got to learn numerology, you got to learn this, that, and the other. It's like almost like a hidden education.
Well, it seems to me that religion kind of is for the simple-minded. I mean, not to put anyone down who is religious, but I'm just saying, like, their basic, like, say with Christianity is, just have faith, just believe. Whereas when you get into occultism, yeah, you got to take into account numerology. Some people take into account the moon phases, the hour of the day, all kinds of things. What mood you're in, you can cast spells, and do rituals better for some people when they're angry. All that comes to account. Whereas with Christianity, you just, have faith and then just sit and listen to what the priest says or what the preacher says or whatever.
Well, and with occultism, that was the basis. Although a lot of what we see as occultic science has become pseudoscience, such as astrology and things like that. It was the basis of like chemistry and all the sciences that we have today are from foundations that were set back into these kind of pseudosciences and imaginary type of things where we're just trying to figure things out and experimenting. And I mean, that's really where science comes from, is from the
basic science that is taught, that all Christians believe in was occultism at one time.
Christians
so was mathematics, algebra.
I mean, alchemy meant chemistry. I mean, alchemy was chemistry, so that was just, you know, they
And
just had different ideas, you know.
and astronomy came from astrology.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I think a good example what brings to mind, since uh, Gazelam has his Enochian tablets there. I mean, I think Enochian's a good example, just to break it down a little bit. And I'm sure you guys know this, but for the audience, I'll do a brief explanation. You know, the idea where Enochian came from was that, you know, the Church of England, England, because of King Henry VIII wanting to get divorces and all that, gave up Catholicism, right? And Catholicism is a very, you know, like you said, they don't really, you shouldn't read. I mean, people don't know that, you know, if you were a priest back, you know, like back in those days, a lot of times you don't know how to read still, and you didn't read the New Testament or the Old Testament or any of that, you know, so you couldn't read. They didn't think that the common person should read the Bible, because they would, you know, it would make them insane, or it would make them question the priest, and you can't do that, because their idea in Catholicism is, you know, you talk to your local pastor or frater or father or whatever, your local priest. He goes to bishop, archbishop, all the way up to the pope, and the pope is supposed to be exactly he's the only one who has a direct line to God, you know, and that's how it worked, you know. So they don't want you to read, they don't want you to figure it out, they don't want you to think. They didn't want you then, and if you did, you'd probably get burned as a witch or something. So, you know, like
But
Martin Luther and all that, you know.
yeah, that's why Protestantism was so extreme at the time. It's because it allowed people to interpret what they were reading by themselves rather than having a middleman like a priest or somebody. Like, for the first time with printing and everything else, you were able to read it and interpret it the way that you wanted, instead of having some hierarchy do it for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So how that ties into Enochian is, so the daughter of King Henry VIII, you know, Queen Elizabeth, the famous Virgin Queen and all that stuff. She was also called the Fairy Queen because she was into occultic stuff, and you know, she was the Fairy Queen. Even I read a book about the whole thing from back in those days that describes her and everything. So her chief astrologist, and also her head of her intelligence, her spies, was John Dee, and so she went to John Dee and said, you know, before we had a way to go directly to God through the Pope, but
Mhm.
now, you know, everybody's looking at me. I'm the head of the Church of England. I'm not really like into this all that much, but you're smarter than me. So teach me a way to like reach God, and so I can tell people, you know, when they say, "What does God say about this?" I can like tell them, "Well, this is what I have, a system to go directly to reach God." And John Dee and then he took Edward Kelly as a scribe. They actually, uh, you know, developed this system of Enochian to try to speak to the angels. And the reason it's called Enochian is because instead of just teaching them the language, because they were like, teach us your language. And they said, well, the first thing we need to like give you an interpretation of the book of Enoch. And that was one of the things they asked for too, is it was a missing book. They you know, it kind of explains Genesis. Enoch kind of explains like the whole idea. Genesis is kind of patched together. If you ever read it, it's really just like more like two stories that they kind of patch together, and a lot of it is from other things, like the flood is also in a
Well, the Book
in
of
like the,
Enoch is also called the Book of Noah. So I see
yeah, book
what
of,
you mean. Yeah.
and a lot of that
So
is taken from other texts, you know, like from the what's that, Gilgamesh, Epic of Gilgamesh has a similar story to all that, and
Yeah.
so it was taken
yeah,
from all that. So they wanted to get the Book of Enoch to understand all this, and you know, the Book of Enoch talks about the war in heaven and all that. Nobody knew about that really that much unless they were into the occult, and so they started doing that, and then that's the whole Enochian system. They taught him that book, they taught him this language, they did all this, and you know, it didn't turn out as well. It didn't work really. I mean, it didn't work out the way they wanted it to, and the way Queen Elizabeth wanted it to, and they were actually, you know, kicked out, and they realized that they were probably not just talking to angels, they were probably talking to these beings that could be angels or demons in their view, you know, which
yeah,
I look at that, you know.
Mhm.
it makes me wonder. I want to ask you, like, so I'm on another show with Aaron Ra, who's like a biologist, atheist, Satanist, and we are doing a reading of the Pearl of Great Price, which is a Mormon scripture, and in here are the prophecies of Enoch. And there's like this big whole thing where like the original tablets of Enoch and how did some of that appear in here and vice versa, whatever. that's besides the point. The thing is with the Enochian language, and I guess what I'm asking you, and you started it out when you were talking about him in the Elizabetharian stuff. How much of this is a very elaborate, maybe not autistic type of hoax? Like, if you're a mathematical genius, I mean, I have all these books here, and they are really strange and amazing. And if you start to get into them deeper, you're like, well, this doesn't quite match here or there. And one thing we were saying on the show is, it's like, how much of this is like Parker's brother, 1500 style?
Well, I do know that there are some experts who say that they've looked at Enochian and say that they've found traces of French
And
different
they've,
types of languages
well, it
tapped in.
has a syntax to it. It does have a syntax. I mean, I have all the calls right here and their translations and stuff, but who's gonna say what? You know, I have translations for stuff all in the Book of Abraham, and the Joseph Smith translated a bunch of shit too. You know, he was a big fan of John Dee. Let's say.
Really interesting.
I mean, I feel that there's. Oh, go ahead.
And more. Well, there's just a lot of commonalities in Mormonism and with John Dee and everything, from the scryer versus the translator and all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like, I think a lot of it is from their minds, obviously. Like for example, the way that the angels described, the name they gave for their country was Londinium or something like that, right? It's like very similar to London or whatever, Londinium. So like, I mean, but then again, if we're really talking to these like old beings that were around since the beginning of time, do they? I mean, and they're just talking right now and this stuff. Is that really like? Would they have a concept of London or England? I mean, we're talking about beings that that at least were thousands of years, and like what would they? Did London or England exist? They didn't exist in our concept. I mean, maybe
It
there were
wasn't even in
Celts
their
or whatever,
minds.
but
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
it was named by the Roman Empire. So like, this is before the Roman Empire. So it's kind of like, yeah, they had these things, they had these ideas, and like, it was like,
Are we talking
yeah,
Archon?
but that's their minds also,
Well, I mean,
We're
I think
talking. Are we talking about like Dungeons and Dragons?
I mean, probably some of it. I think some of it was definitely
in a
made up,
way,
you know.
I mean,
And then there
you
is
got to remember
inconsistencies.
that when it comes down to it, modern day religion, it all comes down to money. I mean, that's what the whole thing is. Make up a whole bunch of stuff and piece stuff together and make money. Now, I do believe that there is a bit of truth in every religion, which, I believe it all came from a source of truth and then kind of branched off and people just started taking advantage of it.
Redefining truth, because are they really interested in truth? Are people really interested in truth? Or are they interested in their fantasies?
I think most people who are part of religion just are looking for some kind of security. Like they want to know, okay, well, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to have a bad fate, but I'll put my faith in this priest or this bishop or this preacher, and he's got it for me. Like I really don't have to worry about things. I can just relax and he's got me taken care of. I think most people in society just want that security. If they don't, they don't have to worry.
Do you both think it's more important to believe in somebody else's bullshit or to believe in your own bullshit?
I would say
I think it's important to look inward and develop your own system of doing things and beliefs rather than.
Yeah, that's where I stand.
That's my take.
I mean, what you're asking too is like so you could apply the same question to the Christian religions, right? It's like saying, did Jesus really exist the way that he's described? I mean, there was no J in Aramaic or that, so his name was Yeshua. If he did exist, did he really rise from the dead? I mean, can that even be proven? I mean, you
Well,
can't. You could say it's in the book, I mean, I've had people when I've said like I've made videos saying, and this is from my teacher from Lon Milo Duquette. He's saying, you know, Solomon, and this is backed up by archaeologists and everything. The whole idea of Solomon, you know, as a king that you know, in the Ars Goetia, it talks about him summoning demons to build temples and all that. That's just all bullshit, right? And there's probably not even anybody. I mean, maybe there was somebody named Solomon who was in a leadership position, maybe a king, but it's not, didn't obviously go down where he's summoning demons to build temples. Probably not.
Those,
But, you know, and then people are
those,
like, no, Solomon existed. He's like the son of David because it says in the Bible. It's like, okay, so like Mickey Mouse existed because Walt Disney was his dad.
You know,
Okay, like that
okay,
settles it, right?
so now we're getting into chaos magic where you can just kind of, you know, use anything to cause
yeah,
change.
They call it
because
belief is tool. Belief is tool, you know? Whatever you
Yeah.
believe has more power
Now,
than whatever the book is.
regardless of whatever you want to believe in, you know, whether it's, you know, what some god or Mickey Mouse or whatever, if you have, you know, if you focus and you have strong intent, you know, and you just, you know, you can, with a combination of things, you can cause things to change. You can cause energy to change. You know, you can use anything you want.
The outlet that where it didn't quite turn out the way I quite thought it did, or it always manifests different than you're going to expect, or I must have done it wrong because it didn't work out the way that I thought it would, or ... And if it does work, hell yeah, I hit the jackpot this time around, right?
Are you talking about just people who say that their results are kind of hit and miss with magic?
I'm just saying, like, how as an individual do you define that? Like, you keep a journal, right? And so you get your hits and misses, and you keep it
Right.
so you can actually
see what works and what not. It's like, you know, like personally, you know, I believe that you can, you know, you can write down your results, and then if that didn't work, well, maybe I'll try that in this moon phase or during this time. You know, that's what I personally believe.
Yeah, and you know what?
And until you find a system that works for you.
Yeah.
Instead of just going off of just whatever someone else's, because you got to remember that. So everybody's born under a different star sign. Everybody, you know, has different planets and stuff associated with their birth chart. Everybody is different. Everyone has their own specialty in magic or different types of divination or whatever. So you can't say that, well, this system of magic applies to everybody and it'll work the same for everybody. No, it doesn't. You know, that's why I think it's good to develop your own system by, you know, trying a bunch of stuff, and you know, that's just my take.
Well, they've proven you can give like a random horoscope to anybody, and they can find commonalities in it.
Yeah, there is, but it has been proven also that if you take a look at people's birth charts, you will find certain things. Like, take for instance, people who are very aggressive in business and people who are soldiers, they all had Mars, you know, was strong in their birth chart. People who become very, you know, people who become big figures in public, you know, they tended to have Jupiter in their birth chart. So I mean, yes, you can. There's been tests that they've given people different, you know, opposite horoscopes and say, well, I found similarities in that. But if you take a look at, you know, people who have actually looked at different birth charts of different people, you will see that certain planets, you know, that pertain to what they do in life, you know, we're present. So it depends on how you want to look at it.
Still cherry pick that stuff and just be like, oh, well, if the Mars sign didn't show up in this guy, well, that didn't mean that he wasn't like a, I don't know. I mean,
I think in astrology can be like the tarot. I mean, you know, tarot, you get a card, and it takes a reader and that's just a prop. You know, that's how I look at it.
You can't, when it comes to divination, let's give tarot an example. You can't
interpret a believer, right? You need the belief to say, oh, well, that's a hit for me.
Well, you can't say that everyone has their own way of reading the tarot. You can't say that one way applies to everybody. Everyone has their own way of doing it. So really, there's no wrong way of doing it. Yeah, but you know, it's all subjective. You know, I mean, this is just, you know, stuff that, you know, based on my experiences that, you know,
I
come to.
I suggest the best and original way for tarot is gameplay with trick games, and what you do is whoever has the highest card wins the trick.
That's one way to go about it.
Hmm.
Or you
That's the
can.
original.
You know, with all this, a couple of stories are coming to mind about chaos magic, and it ties into Enochian too, I believe. Is like, you know, one of the famous stories about how chaos magic came to be and the whole belief is tool and everything is about there was like these Golden Dawn magicians, you know, and if you know anything about the Golden Dawn, it's very structured, it's very Christian based. They taught they you know they do God names like Adonai. They chant God names, Eholim, you know, stuff like that. It's very Christian based, right? So these progressive magicians, and this is probably a couple hundred years ago at least. Uh, they just said, you know, what if we use something else? I mean, we use all the same stuff, but instead of saying Adonai, we say some other names. And so they actually got like these gods and this belief system that H.G. Wells made up in one of his novels, right? And so they chanted those names and they went by that, and they believed in a whole different way from Christianity, and they found they got the same results. You know, very similar, if not the same results exactly with what they were getting when they were using what they were told to use, and that would only
Yeah.
work.
Like I
So
was
that's
saying
where
earlier,
chaos magic comes in. You know.
yeah, like I was saying, but regardless of whether you want to put faith in this deity or that deity or whatever, or something that from pop
Yeah.
culture, you will
We're
get
talking
results if you go about it,
H.P.
the right way.
Lovecraft thing, you know.
Yeah, the same thing with H.P. Lovecraft. But here's how it ties into Enochian, I believe, right? A lot of people that are doing Enochian, like Anton LaVey put it in the Satanic Bible. Aleister Crowley used it in a whole different way, right? They weren't super Christian like that. John Dee and Edward Kelly, if you read their diaries, they were incredibly Christian. I mean, they would
It was the
pray and
comic.
fast and do all this stuff before they were doing these readings of Enochian and all that. So almost nobody even
You
knows
know.
what they did, and they were like a super Christians back then. So if you're not a super Christian, you're not doing it like John Dee did. So like, it wasn't occultic. They were not trying to be satanic. They were not trying to be counter religious. They were trying to build a Protestant system to reach God, and they
Or,
felt they
or
had to
try to
pray. They
put
had to do all the
Elizabeth
stuff around it. You know.
on, right, or try to put on Queen Elizabeth with a big spectacle. And not only, but he was like all over the place. They, like, if you read the thing, they were in like other parts of Europe and stuff, and then got called back, and all of its library had been dismantled and things. But the whole
Yeah.
story is
Well, and
interesting, and
there's
like,
also a counter
not
a theory that goes on about how Edward Kelly was just a con man, because I don't know if you know he got his ears cut off, or like his ears on the
what
bottom
was the
cut. He had
time.
all sorry, I was wear a hat. It's like because he was an alchemist also, right? And alchemy back then was basically making what we call today fake gold, alloy that looked like gold, right? So like he would, because they were saying that, oh, you can make gold, right? So if you just mix some yellow material and this and with regular iron or whatever concoction that looks kind of like gold, you'd be like, and today we just say, oh, that's fake gold or fool's gold,
Right.
whatever you want to call it. Like they sell at the
I
swap meet. But back
I
then, that
saw
was like he could get away with it. When he didn't get away with it, they cut his ears off. They even had like special gold chains that they would hang these guys by for to execute them for doing that.
But it's true. Like I've seen in an actual demonstration where they took copper tablets and you can soak them in a certain chemical and the copper will turn a gold tint. And so it looks like it's gold. So you can say, look, I can transform this copper into gold. It's not gold, but it looks like gold once you pull it out of the
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like
emulsion.
stage magic tricks. It's like stage magic tricks.
But all it is to this day. Magicians. Okay, the whole separation of stage magic versus the other stuff, like there is no difference. I don't believe there is a difference. And if the expositors are going to expose it and let everybody know, like Penn and Teller or some
Can
bullshit,
can
and the
you
other people get fooled by it. And like, if you want to fool people and that's your goal, then go for it. I feel bad for the people you're fooling, but if they deserve to get
Well, I mean,
fooled, I guess.
no doubt that there's some charlatans in the occult community. I wouldn't doubt that at all. I mean, it's like a lot of them
what
is
percentages?
I don't know what percentages. I mean, I think it's just subjective how you look at it. But you know, whether it's Christianity or the occult, there are people trying to take advantage of other people. But then there are some people who are sincere. You know, now let me ask you guys about. Go ahead.
The sincerity, because you're trying to make somebody feel better, or you want to feel better because you're making them feel better. I mean, I don't know.
Well, let me have you guys comment on this here. So this is from Penn State essay. It is no accident that the occult and religion perpetually attract each other, but without either ever absorbing or destroying the other. What do you guys think about that?
Wait, could you just repeat that first part or something?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll repeat again. So it says, it is no accident that the occult and religion perpetually attract each other, but without either ever absorbing or destroying the other.
I think they're kin. They they play off the same fucking game, right? They're playing both sides, at both ends of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would like, what comes to mind for me is it's almost like the Old Testament versus the New Testament, you know? Like the Old Testament, people don't look at it that way because people don't read it, but there's a lot of occult stuff in the Old Testament, you know? I mean, you know, the whole making of the tablets that the priests wore with all the different crystals on it, the you know, just the whole kosher, you know, and all the kosher laws, not just the food, all this
There's
stuff.
A lot of divination in it too.
Yeah, a lot of divination. You know, there's a lot of occult stuff in the New Testament is more religion because all you got to do is believe in Jesus, basically. You know, I mean, that's it.
Well, they'll say you can't do. They'll say, well, you can't do certain things, or I can do this, I can do that. Well, that was in the Old Testament. This is the New Testament now.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like
that's why,
like some rules applied to people who lived back then, but not you. You know, that type.
Yeah, well, that's why people eat pork, even though they're you know they're Christian. You know, they get rid of all the laws that are in Leviticus and all that, and wear certain. I mean, like the only people who really follow the Old Testament, and even like modern day Jewish people don't, if they're like whatever you call. I mean, like Hasidic Jews are the only ones. You know, those clothes are actually kosher, and the hats and the food. I mean, they're living the Old Testament like, like that, like it should be, as well as they can, right? I mean, nobody can know exactly, but yeah, they have things on clothing like you can't mix certain patterns, you can't mix certain materials. I mean, it gets really intense, and to really live that life, you really have to like know all this stuff, and you don't need to know it back then. The priest would tell you, or the priest would manufacture the clothing a certain way. They would inspect the food. I mean, part of kosher also. I mean, I worked at a place where they had kosher. You had to, not only have the food, prepared a certain way, even if it's in jars, then you had to have a rabbi come in and inspect the food and bless it. That's the part. So like you have to, they have to do that. So every time, go into a restaurant, if it's kosher, it should be blessed. I mean, maybe they bless the whole kitchen and it's okay. I don't know, but that's part of the whole thing,
What do you both think about Louisiana right now making like public schools display the 10 Commandments? The thing is it's a law now, and not only that, but does it talk about mixing fabrics? I hope your kid isn't wearing polyester and cotton as they're walking into the school or something.
Well,
but for real, like it's like the 10 Commandments. Yeah. Look up, Louisiana has now made it a law that it must be displayed in public.
And there are also other states that are, I think, requiring that the Bible be taught as part of the curriculum.
I say bring Thor in there and say, "Hail Thor! We're going to want if we're gonna have prayer in schools, then we're gonna lay down the hammer, and Thor's gonna fucking be praying every fucking Wednesday.
Well, I mean,
right?
the pendulum is always going to swing from one direction to the other direction. It's just, you know, no matter, no matter how long we live, we're always during our lifetime going to see that pendulum swing from one end to the other. It's just a matter of us living in that society and adjusting, you know.
So where's it going? Christian nationalism? Is that where it's heading right now?
Well, that's actually on the rise.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah,
that is on the rise.
Very much on the rise. Yeah.
You know, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much on the rise, and I think it's even going to get it's going to get even more. And yeah, I mean that's but with this next election, I think it's definitely going to start off all that. I think, but my personal, going back to the Ten Commandments, though, I mean, I look at the Ten Commandments as a way, you know, basically they had a good idea. I mean, all the other stuff, yeah, of course, polyester or whatever, but you know, and not eating pork and all these rules, it gets kind of ridiculous. That's not really going to solve any problems. I think it's just their occultic beliefs about how to live. But the Ten Commandments, if you read them, it's just kind of get people to avoid trouble, you know, because it is trouble. If somebody, even if you're not, you know, if somebody steals something from you, you're going to get pissed off and you're probably going to get violent.
Stop. So out of those 10 commandments, which ones? Steal, kill, adultery? Is that something? The rest is some fucking whiny bitch God going, yeah, don't worship.
Observe the Sabbath and make it holy.
Like
I mean, it's getting them to stay. I mean, if you don't believe that the God who gave those commandments is the only God, then why even follow him? It's like, well, look, that's kind of the proof, you know. I mean, I'm not saying I believe it. I think that's very good, but that's another reason is religion. People of other religions causes more war than anything. More war than drugs. Sex, marriage causes war. Causes more murders than anything.
War. You know? I mean, let's go back to the founding of this country, the United States of America. So, I mean, it was supposedly founded by Christians, quote unquote Christians. Okay, and you know. But, you know, people look at the founding fathers as these, you know, like, oh, we got to get back to the founding fathers, which is what the, you know, the right tends to focus mostly on. But at the same time, you know, I don't see people who massacre Native Americans and take their land in the name of God, you know, and call themselves here. I don't see them as heroes. I mean, I respect the fact that, you know, this is our country and, you know, we have a society to live in. At the same time, you know, I don't see the founding fathers as someone to revere wholeheartedly because, you know, they're genocidal maniacs masquerading under Christianity, under religion. You know, religion does cause war. You know, spirituality is the way to go, not religion. What do you guys think?
I'm saying that most of the founding fathers weren't Christian, and they weren't for a theocracy. They were against it. They were,
of course, but but you know, coming from Europe, they had that, you know, Judeo-Christian background, and they felt that it had to have, you know, some influence on here. Even though there was separation of church and state, it did influence them. You know, on our money, it says, "In God we trust."
But the thing is that in God we trust stuff wasn't mostly put in until the 1950s. Even in the Pledge of Allegiance, it wasn't in the Pledge of Allegiance until the 1950s. So that stuff was put in later on to like try to trump up the whole God thing and stuff. That whole Christian nation thing is a lie. It's not true.
Well, the thing they could also was it in the Declaration of Independence or in the early document, founding fathers, like it was okay to own slaves, you know, or something like that.
Yeah,
you know, all things change.
Even if they didn't say it was okay, I mean, they still did it. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff is a lot of this too is like people argue about this kind of stuff. The founding, it doesn't really matter with the founding fathers. I mean, maybe they personally and they personally owned slaves. You know, a lot of them did, I'm sure, and stuff like that. And they personally probably killed Indians and stuff, you know, and all that stuff. I mean, but the thing is whatever they said back then, it didn't come down. And if you ask like a frontiersman who's out there and you know, he got the bow and arrow shot at him, he's just gonna kill the whole tribe if he can. He's not gonna like, oh, let's check what the founding fathers think. You know what I mean? It's just human nature. Humans kill each other. you know.
You can't apply principles that applied 300 years ago to modern day, because all things change. Religion changes, language changes, principles changes. So let's say like something that worked for society, 500 years ago would not work for today, because as we progress and become more knowledgeable and have more wisdom, you have to tweak things and alter them, because everything changes. I think that's just
Yeah.
change is just the law of existence.
And a lot of people don't want to look at, I mean, like realism, cultural realism. I mean, these things happened and worked that way because they were. I mean, 300 years ago, the majority of people that were here from Europe felt that other people that weren't, white, European based, Christian people were like kind of like animals. It's like subhumans. Animal, that was what they believed. And some people even believe that today, I'm sure. And it's a horrible belief, but it happens, and people did it for hundreds of years. Our whole country's based on that, basically. I think. I mean, it was built by us. I mean, that's why people argue that this is a satanic country, an evil country. Even if you want to say worse than Satanists, because Satanists can say like they're really the good guys or whatever. But we were the King George was representing God to us, because we were a colony of his. We told him to F off, and we don't want to pay his taxes, and then we won a war. We did that. Then all the genocide that's happened. It happened. Then the slavery. We built the nation on slavery. All these things are very evil things, and I'm still proud. I mean, I've been in the army. My son's in the army now. I'm very proud to be American, but we got to realize we have a very evil history, and I mean, it's not our fault. We weren't born. We didn't do the slavery. We didn't do the genocide. None of us. No people modernly do that. Hopefully, but it is our ancestors and our legacy. And that's how it is. I mean, some of our ancestors did, some of them are not, but it is an evil country. It could be called even a satanic country on the bad side of Satanism. And I just think that's cultural realism. And it happened because it happened. If
Yeah,
everybody cared about the morals that we're arguing about today and everything, it just wouldn't have happened. But it happened, and we could say it was unjust, it was horrible, this and that, and we should pay people that's ancestors were on the bad side of that. But I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, it just happened. That's how things came out. You could say it was bad and horrible, but are you going to go back and punish the great grandchildren of the people that
well,
did
no,
it?
all we can do is just learn from the mistakes and then just move on. And it
Yeah, it's
just
hard to know to go from hindsight where we are at now and everything, but I'm proud to live in America. I like America. I don't like the direction it's going, and I don't like all the crazy stuff and everything and stuff, but I love this land. And I think maybe an answer is that I love the indigenous people that have been here for a long time and stuff. Like, learn from those people and stuff. I'm fucking tired as white people as anybody. Fuck white people. Like, I'm tired of
well,
white people.
I'm proud to be American as well, but
But and I love myself, and I'm proud to be who I am and everything and stuff. But I'm sick of this shit. Like, let's all come together and shit. Like, I don't know how it's gonna happen or whatever, but
I
it's
personally, I don't think it's going to happen until we have a huge war, and a big culling. I mean, there's just too many people, and in a long enough timeline, with too many people, you just get people killing each other. I mean, and it's not just an American thing. It's not a white versus brown, white versus black, or any of that. I mean, look, here in LA, and this is just examples of it. We got a diverse peoples here, right? So there's certain areas, and this is segregation to a certain degree, like in Watts or Compton, there's mostly all black people. So they don't get along. I mean, they form the Crips and the Bloods and kill each other, right? We have a lot of Hispanic people. The Mexicans don't like the people from Central America a lot. And even if they're all Mexicans, they got the North and the South that fight each
Yeah.
other, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's like, you know, and
I
I'm sure
think
there's
I
other
think
white
that it's
gangs that don't
just
like each other, you know?
I think it's just in human nature to be in conflict.
Yeah,
You know, as not individual, just as a whole. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can even like say people who live in the same city. Well, I live in this part of town. Well, I don't like
Yeah,
people who live
yeah.
in that part of town. You know, but
Yeah.
Xenophobia between small groups, even, you know, like
it's
you know,
And
like as a
even in churches. You know, like well, you know, those people, they interpret the scripture this way, but we interpret it this way. You know,
yeah, yeah,
don't
for
shake their
sure.
hand or say hi to them on Sunday. You know,
And I don't
even in the
I don't want
occult,
to,
like they say, well, this deity is
yeah,
actually this deity, but he's not. I don't want to talk to them. You know,
the
there's always
cult,
going to be
Mhm.
the-
that.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean,
So
it's not.
anyway,
I didn't want to like, and I'm not putting. I'm just saying where I live in LA that stuff goes on, and there is a lot of racism in America, and it's horrible. But you know, look at Europe. You know, I mean, not modernly, but in the past, you know, the English didn't get along with the French or the Germans or the. I mean, you know, World War I, World War II. They had so many wars between France, Spain, and England, Germany, and then the Protestant versus Catholic, all of that, you know, they were mostly all white people in Europe. You know, I mean,
mhm.
there was maybe
even
once in a
even
while
as
somebody.
Americans, it's
Yeah,
always right versus left, which
but
yeah,
I
no, I
will
mean,
never end.
as anything, you know, I mean, it just goes that way, you know. And I wish it would stop, but I mean, it's just like, you
but
know, like where people are talking about doing things to stop the Palestinians and the
Right.
Israeli conflict. They've been doing that for thousands of years. I don't think
Yeah, it's
anything we do is gonna help. Giving
yeah,
weapons to
and
one side
based
over
on
the other.
religion, based on
It's
some
that
ancient
yeah,
books that they, you know,
yeah.
one clings to one,
Well, I
one
mean,
clings to the
it
other.
says in the Quran. It says in the Quran to don't trust the Jews, kill the Jews. It says that stuff. I mean, and you know, it insults Arabs in the Old Testament. You know, so I mean,
but that
it's been like that for so many years, like at least 4,000 years, probably even more. And it's, you know,
so it's come around full circle, and I'm glad you both brought this up because don't you believe that religion is the fucking problem, right? All of that,
I
everything
think
you've been
so.
talking
I think so.
about.
Like I said, you know, spirituality is the way to go, not religion. You know,
yeah.
I think that's where,
But
you know, if we were
spirituality,
all
common sense, and fucking like please, please.
Mm.
yeah, I know.
I don't think religion is the only problem too. I think politics, even marriage and romance, the way, I mean, sex
Religion,
is a
like
problem. It's going to be a problem. You know, I mean, people are going to kill each other over sex and romance and marriage and all that. That's so
when
you
the
can't really
last
escape conflict by just saying, well, it's all just because of the way people think. I mean, even if there was no religion and no politics, I think people would still form systems to conflict with each other and eventually go to war and kill each other.
when
It's
was the
Yeah,
human
last
nature.
if they were
time
caveman, they'd say, well, my cave is better than your cave. You know, more people hang out in mine than yours. They'd fight over that. You know?
Or like look at the Neanderthals versus the Homo sapiens. I mean, right?
Yeah, there you go.
They'll get
Good
one
example.
group that looks different. I mean, we people, you know, human beings naturally form to look different in certain areas. You know, and
Okay.
that's
Now,
what they're gonna go.
to
let me just say real quick,
go ahead.
Kennedy was all controversial because he was a fucking Catholic.
Right.
So when was the last time we even had a president that wasn't a Christian? Come on.
Hmm?
Or supposedly
I mean,
Christian.
Joe Biden's a Catholic, right? he
Uh,
is. He is. Right? He is.
and
He's a Catholic.
I saw Trump hold that upside down Bible, so I know that he's a big rootin' tootin' Christian.
Well,
Well,
hey.
anyway, so let's kind of switch the direction here. This is something I came across. It's called Principles of a Universal Religion. Now, keep the occult in mind when I read some of these bullet points. So, one of the principles of a universal religion is that there is an invisible world made of energy, and man has a spiritual body made of energy. The invisible world is full of gods, angels, demons, ghosts, many other spiritual creatures. The soul does exist after death, may go to various levels of the afterlife, which may be called heaven or hell, or it may reincarnate. Now, you know, as an occultist, some occultists believe in most of them actually believe in a lot of this stuff. Some may not believe in some of it. What do you guys think when you make comparisons?
0.
Yeah, I know you're an atheist, really, or something like that. But I mean, I believe in all that. I mean, I think that I believe in reincarnation. I believe that there's a spirit world, and
Yeah.
but there's really no way to prove it necessarily, other than my own experience, or maybe sometimes when, which that doesn't prove it. If there's something that's I divinate or the spirits tell me and it comes true. I mean, that could be like, well, that was just your own psychic power or whatever. But I believe in all that. I believe that people do go to different places based on what they do in this world. I also believe that, I mean, on top of the spirit world, I believe that there's also, which I think we've talked about this before in one of our other videos. This Arabic philosopher came up with this idea of stellar rays, and that comes to astronomy, astrology, that all these rays are around us, but they're invisible. So whatever we do, like that's how magic works. So
So
whatever we do, light a candle, light an incense, if you sacrifice an animal, I mean, for meat, I mean, the sacrifice without that would be kind of an evil thing, just to kill a dog or a
now
cat or a bird
that
that you don't
that
eat. But,
that comes to mind, like the principle that a lot of people believe, where there's like a cosmic web. Everything's connected like a web.
yeah,
Therefore, everything can be affected by certain actions.
Yeah,
know?
like
yeah.
a cop or
Mhm.
something.
It's I mean, it also ties into science and chaos magic, chaos theory, other than chaos magic. So like the idea of string theory, that's like they're invisible strings that make up everything.
Yeah.
That's, string
Now, keep
theory.
in mind that that is a theory. However, I do believe that that there is a lot of truth in that.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. I mean, it's a theory. Quantum mechanics it's like it's saying that it's not just like stranger than we think; it's stranger than we can think.
Yeah.
So there are invisible forces. Whether people, it's not even experience. This is scientifically proven. We already know atoms and all that are real. The invisible
Yeah.
forces that we can't see that make up our bodies, that make up our environment, that make up everything. So there's
Yeah.
molecules. There's that. So the idea that there's strings that come down and they all, there's can be manipulated a certain way, and there's multiple universes. That's like really, I mean, I think in our lifetimes that's going to be proven to be true. I think,
So,
and that doesn't mean
so
that it's religious or spiritual. It's just scientific. I mean, I think all, magic, spiritualism, religion is a lot of that is just like trying to explain things we don't understand, and it becomes technology after we understand it somewhat. Like
Yeah.
I'm using my cell phone now. I don't know exactly how to put one of these together. I mean, I don't think humans can. You need the other machines to put it together, but it's technology. We trust it because we were actually seeing each other and talking.
They do
That's
have
science,
crystals. Go ahead. Go ahead.
science and somebody did bring that together and made it happen and stuff. There is like something that happened to make that happen. It didn't just happen abracadabra and stuff.
Mhm.
I guess where I'm coming from with the belief thing is it's not so much of like what you believe. I don't have my thing is I like to say what I think, because to say a belief is like to make like an accusation that this is definite. I believe this. This is true for me. That doesn't mean that it is truth or reality. If something's true to you, doesn't mean that if it's true. So if someone's interested in truth, they should look for something that truly is. Like, so I don't have a problem with somebody believing something, but it doesn't mean that it's true. Because someone believes something does not mean that it's
Now, it
true.
doesn't mean it is true for everybody. It can be true for you,
Well, it
but
could be true
it
for you.
doesn't necessarily mean it's true for everybody. Go
It's
ahead.
truth for somebody, actual truth. It's that actual truth. Because you believe it and it's true to you, is that actual truth, or is it just truth to you? It's just truth to you. That's not truth. That's redefining
Well,
truth,
that's
right?
kind of like when it comes to magic. Your system of magic may not work as well if someone else uses it. It's kind of
It's
the
all
same
about
thing.
results, though. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you say it's all
Yeah,
about
there he goes. He hit
results?
the nail on the head, right?
Yeah.
It,
I mean,
it,
if you get
it,
results with whatever,
but
if you get similar results or the same results you're looking for, then it
so,
is true.
Guion,
Right? I
you
mean,
lost your keys and you prayed to God because you couldn't find them. and you had an inspiration to look under the table and you found them there. Was God the responsible for that? Was he the one that was responsible for you finding the keys?
Well, I mean, I look at it that way, that God in that context is like a spiritual crowbar, kind of,
Well,
you know. I mean,
it
you don't have the self confidence. I mean, not you, but whoever lost their keys doesn't have
You
the
could
self
have
confidence or the
found the
memory, obviously, to remember where they are. So they ask a disembodied being and believe in that disembodied being, and then they have confidence
it
that that disembodied being or spiritual whatever, even if they make it up as imagination, can find the keys, and then they find them. So then that's true
from a
because they
spiritual
found the
point of
keys.
view,
Why not just
it
give
could have been.
reality? Actually stumbled on him and found him. About why after it's the God of the gaps, right? That's
Hmm.
like a fallacy. The God of the gaps fallacy. It's like I don't understand what that object is in the sky. Therefore, it must be a UFO. I just barely saw someone post Sirius, the dog star, and they're like, "What is this weird blinking light in the sky? Oh my God, it must be a UFO. It's been there every morning." It's the fucking God star. It's Sirius. It's really there. It's not a UFO, but to them, it's a UFO that appears every morning. So,
Hmm.
like, what is the reality? Is it the fucking God star
Now
Sirius, or
the
is it
point
like
when
a
it comes
fucking
right,
UFO? You
what it
know?
comes down to is like, okay, results, and can we exist as a society, and continue in harmony with each other, regardless of what everyone wants to believe. That's what it comes down to, I think. And some people, Guion, you had mentioned about cell phones. Some people believe in cell phones, but not in spirituality or divination or anything like that. Cell phones have crystals in them, don't they?
Hmm.
So I mean, you'd have to admit that crystals have some power.
It's all based on metal and crystal. I mean, and glass. I mean, you could say it's a product of alchemy. I mean,
There you
So,
just
go.
picture this. Imagine if there's a huge apocalypse. There's all this. And there's dark ages in all over the world from now on, and then people find and cell phones and they're doing them. I mean, they would think they're magic. They wouldn't if they
okay.
were like in
Right.
darkness for 200 years and they stumbled upon the kind of technology we have now without the context us living where it developed, where we saw it develop, then they would say that's magic, you know?
Hmm.
So
Well,
that's, I mean, because they wouldn't understand the technology at all. We somewhat understand the technology, so we call it just technology. If somebody who doesn't understand this at all, like say you give one a cell phones to like a Amazon tribe that isn't civilized,
Yeah.
they'd think that's magic, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they
Right.
think a cigarette lighter is
Right. And
magic.
then
I mean,
yeah,
there's, you
and
know,
then and then if you gave it to someone in the 1500s, in the Middle Ages, or somewhere in Europe, they'd probably think it's something of the devil.
mhm.
but here is Mormon apologetics. This is a seer stone. Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon through a seer stone by putting it in a hat, peering into the hat, excluding the darkness, and all the translation came up through the stone. Do you know how they've actually described this in contemporary times to be able to explain it? A fucking iPhone. This there and like I
Really?
see I that Guion, it's like for real. That's what you've been saying. It's like,
Mhm.
is it a seer stone or is it a fucking iPhone?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I mean, it goes back to like, I remember when I was raised around a Mormon family. They were Native American Mormon, right? And so like, you know, my friend would say, oh, you know, and some of the Mormon writings, it's exactly like our Navajo teachings, right? And like, it's a miracle that proves to me that it's real, right? And I was like, how do you know Joseph Smith didn't sit around a campfire and hear you guys talking about it and
Yeah.
just write it
Good Bible.
down? I mean, right? How do
Easily.
you know
I
that
mean,
didn't
he
happen?
he got
You
his
know?
references from everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, I
then
mean,
But
just
here's a good example. Is I mean, and you've mentioned this before, and we all three know this, I'm sure, is but just for our audience, is that you know the language that he said he translated to Joseph Smith and all that, it was some form of Egyptian, right? I mean, what did they call it? Gazelam, like
the
Egyptian, Proto-Egyptian, or something like that.
Reformed Egyptian, yeah.
Reformed Egyptian. Okay, so there were actually people that brought mummies from Egypt into the U.S. as a sideshow thing, right? And you probably know this story, right? And so Joseph Smith bought them and you know, because he was like, that's Egyptian, right? And it had hieroglyphics on the wrappings and hieroglyphics on they had some papyrus and all that. So so Joseph Smith supposedly translated them, right? And you know, back then they didn't really have. If they did have any, they didn't find the Rosetta Stone and all that, and so they didn't have hieroglyphics translated to Greek, then translated to English or whatever. So he translated them, and then later they, you know, they did translate things, and they looked at those things, and it's completely wrong. He was way off. You know, he was just making shit up. I mean, so does that prove that? Why would anybody be Mormon after? Does that debunk Mormonism? It's not. I mean,
But
people
you
are still
know, some
following it.
people, I guarantee, have put their faith in those lies and gotten results.
This
I
this
doubt some people have.
This is exactly what we've been talking about on my other show I'm at, so I'll make sure it's in the show notes and stuff because it's hilarious.
Yeah. I'll have to
We're
check that
reading.
out, and maybe I could go, or I could go on, or if Alfredo wants to go on, I would mind. I would like to talk about it.
Yeah,
Probably is not as an expert as you guys, but I probably would have some comments as an outsider.
I'd invite on Guion, especially with some of your weird Mormon background. That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, there's I mean, it's funny. Mormonism is kind of like a cowboy version of Christianity thing. You know, I mean, it's like,
That's a good
you
way of
know,
putting it.
They ran out
yeah.
here to
I mean,
Mexico. It was
I mean,
a wild.
if you got a frontiersman and to start a witch coven, it would look like that, right? It would look like this big tough guy with a Bowie knife around his neck and like all these wives, and that's what it would look like if you had cowboy or pioneer witchcraft, basically. I mean,
Yeah,
but you know, I mean,
Pioneer witchcraft.
all the religions from the United States are more Gnostic. You know, all of them that form in are more Gnostic in my opinion. You know, like Jehovah's Witness, Mormonism, you know, Seventh Day Adventists. They're all more Gnostic than the ones that were more like from Europe or even the
and
Middle East or from Jerusalem or whatever.
holy rollers and the shakers and
Yeah. The Amish, all that. I mean, that's way more Gnostic. It doesn't tell you to do that stuff in the Bible to like not use electricity. And I mean, they didn't even know about electricity, but you know, why do they do that? It's like they had some Gnostic.
Right.
They were in Gnostic trance, and one of their leaders told them to do that, to dress
They
that
believe
way.
it's God's will.
The Amish, the what is the other one? The Mennonites, all that stuff. You know.
I love the Mennonites. In fact, there's a lot of crossover with that stuff and Mormons. And there's a lot of Mennonites out here that show up at different art fairs and stuff because of the crossover.
Yeah. I mean that the thing is too is even though you know you could debunk any religion, and you know when I encounter Mormons, I'm fascinated to talk to them about it all, even the ones that are actively you know
It is
in
interesting.
the thing and try to convert me or whatever. I'm like interested in all that. I think there's also a thing with the Mormonism, and some of it's stereotypical, but it's like you know like the Howard Hughes only used Mormons as his business. They got this group called the Mormon Mafia, which that's used in another context too, but he only used Mormons because he liked that they didn't drink, and he said they were clean because he was a neatness freak. You know, he had the old,
Right.
he just think they're neat, they're nice, they don't drink, so they won't get drunk and tell us secrets. You know, and so that's doesn't. But he would never become a Mormon. You know, he didn't. He was
Right.
not with
That's an
religion,
interesting strategy.
but because he thought the Mormons were just good people, you know, even though he didn't believe in all of their stuff and he wouldn't convert to the religion, he's like, I want these people managing my stuff.
I was thinking of you because of this. It's Mormon spies, Hughes, and the CIA.
That's awesome, man. I got to get that book.
I
Yeah, I
saw
got to get
that
that
today.
book.
Where'd you get that?
I read a biography about that too, you know.
Lighthouse Ministry. They were an evangelical Christian group that was all out to get the Mormons. She was a granddaughter. Sandra Tanner was a granddaughter of Brigham Young, and they became big evangelical like expositors of Mormonism.
It's amazing what you'll find, especially when you go to various bookstores and stuff. But yeah, it's been a very good discussion, guys. Thank you for your time. Anything you guys want to go ahead and plug, or just go ahead and say before we call this a day?
I mean, I'll go. Just if people want to, I'm sure you put the links below. Guillotine Productions for my YouTube channel, Instagram, on my Facebook as Guion Hughes.
Yeah.
Let me just clear up. This is just a steering wheel because we talked about that. It's not some kind of magical prop. I'm in the car, so.
Guion's out and about in LA, and he just got in the car
Yeah.
and started filming. So
Yeah, and I'm
with
getting good
us,
energy. I'm right by a Buddhist temple here. I think I showed you guys. It's like
yeah,
really cool. I'm getting good
yeah.
energy from this area. It's not
So
too taken over yet by the tent cities.
yeah, no homeless guys gone up to you. You're in a car,
Well, there
So
was
so
a few that came by. There was almost, actually, I don't know if you noticed, I was kind of looking because these two cars honked at each other, and these two like
right,
kind of cholo looking guys, older cholo guys, like
yeah.
retired Pachucos got out and were almost going to fight, you know. They were like, "Why you honking me, man?" You know.
Well,
no,
so
it's weird because when the train would go by, it almost looked like you had some weird like screen save blue screen behind with the
Oh
train
yeah.
would go
yeah,
once
I've
in
been
a
looking
while.
at buses and all kind of things passing by you, Guion. But anyway,
Yeah.
so everyone who's go ahead.
I didn't say I would like to plug the I'm on RN Raw doing the Pearl of Great Price. If you're into the fucking prophecies of Enoch and stuff, we've been reading that. I'll put some links in the little
Send me the
question
link and
thing.
I'll put it below by your name. So everyone
Yeah.
who's watching, if you want to check out Guion or Gazelam on their other social media links, I'll have that all below. And of course, everyone who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.